The music was loud, but somehow the silence hurt more. I stood at the door of my own house, my hand still resting on the handle I had installed years ago, and for the first time in 61 years, I hesitated to step inside. There were strangers laughing in my living room, lights I didn't switch on, celebrations I didn't know about. And then a single sentence stopped my world. "You weren't invited." In that moment, I realized something terrifying. Sometimes, the place you built with your own hands can become the one place you no longer belong. Welcome to my YouTube channel Epic Stories Where Silence Speaks. My name is Zor and I am 61 years old. At my age, you think you've seen everything life can throw at you. You believe you've learned patience, forgiveness, and the quiet strength of staying silent when it hurts the most. But nothing prepared me for the day my grandson's wife looked me straight in the eye and said, "You weren't invited to this party." I still remember that evening like a scar that never quite fades. It was a cool Saturday and I had just finished watering the small garden behind my house. That garden, it wasn't much, but I built it with my own hands, just like I built the house itself. Brick by brick, year by year. This wasn't just a house, it was a lifetime. I raised my son here, watched him take his first steps in the same hallway where my grandson now walked. I worked double shifts for years, sometimes skipping meals, just so my family could have a roof over their heads. And now, that same house was filled with laughter, music, guests, a celebration, but not for me. I heard the music before I even stepped inside. Loud, cheerful, full of life. For a moment I smiled. Maybe it was a surprise. Maybe they were celebrating something and wanted to include me. I opened the door slowly. The living room was decorated beautifully, balloons, lights, a big table full of food. People were laughing, taking pictures. My grandson stood there, smiling proudly beside his wife. She looked elegant, confident, different. She wasn't like this when she first entered our family. Back then, she used to greet me respectfully. "Assalamu alaikum, Dada Jai," she would say with a soft smile. But over time, things changed, slowly, silently, dangerously. As I stepped further inside, a few people glanced at me, confused. I could feel it immediately. I didn't belong in that moment. I walked toward my grandson. "Beta, what's the occasion?" I asked gently. Before he could answer, she stepped forward, his wife. Her expression wasn't rude at first. It was worse. It was dismissive, cold, like I was invisible. "This is a private party," she said calmly. I blinked, not understanding. "I live here," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, and then she said it, the sentence that changed everything. "You weren't invited." Time froze, the music faded in my ears, the laughter turned into noise, and my heart felt like it dropped into an empty well. I looked at my grandson. He avoided my eyes. That hurt more than her words, because silence is the loudest betrayal. I stood there for a few seconds, just hoping that someone would say something, that my grandson would step forward and say, "No, Dada Jai, please stay." No one did, not him, not anyone, so I nodded just once, and quietly walked back to my room. That night I didn't eat, not because I wasn't hungry, but because some pains don't let food go down your throat. I sat on my bed, staring at the walls I had painted myself years ago, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a guest in my own home. You see, a few years ago when my grandson got married, I made a decision, a big one. I transferred the house ownership partly in his name so he could feel secure. I even agreed to help him with a business loan. I signed documents, agreements, and yes, a mortgage. The house I built was now tied to a financial responsibility when I was still paying. Why did I do it? Because that's what we do for family. We give and give and give until there's nothing left. But that night something inside me changed, not anger, not revenge, just clarity. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. The house was quiet. The decorations were still there, leftovers of a celebration I was never part of. I made tea for myself, sat in the same chair where I used to sit with my wife before she passed away. She used to say, "Zor, respect is the one thing you should never beg for." I didn't understand it fully back then. Now I did. By noon I was at the bank, the same bank where I had signed the mortgage papers. The officer greeted me politely. "How can I help you, sir?" I looked him in the eye and said calmly, "I want to cancel the mortgage arrangement tied to my grandson's extension." Looked surprised. "Sir, that will have consequences. The payments." "I'll handle it," I interrupted. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. Over the next few days, I made arrangements, legal steps, financial adjustments. It wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my dignity, my peace. A week later, I called my grandson to sit with me. He looked nervous. Maybe he already knew something was wrong. I said softly, "Do you remember who built this house?" He nodded. "You did, Ajay. Do you remember who stood silent when I was told I wasn't invited into it?" His eyes dropped. "I made a mistake," I continued. "Not in loving you, never that, but in forgetting that love without respect becomes weakness." Looked up, tears in his eyes. "Ajay, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say that day. That was the problem," I said gently. "You didn't say anything." I explained everything to him, about the mortgage, the changes, the decisions I had made. His face turned pale. "But where will we go?" he asked quietly. That question pierced my heart, because despite everything, he was still my grandson. "You will stay here," I said. "This is still your home, but things will change." Looked confused. "Respect will not be optional anymore." That evening, his wife came to talk to me for the first time in a long while. She looked unsure. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said. I nodded. "You did." Silence filled the room. "I thought," she hesitated, "I thought it was our space now." I looked at her calmly. "A house can become yours," I said, "but the heart's inside, it must accept you first." She lowered her gaze, and for the first time I saw regret, real regret. Things didn't change overnight. Respect never returns instantly. It grows slowly, like a plant that needs care. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Small things began to shift. She started greeting me again. My grandson began sitting with me for tea. We talked, we listened, we healed. But I never forgot that night. Not because I held a grudge, but because it reminded me of something important. Even the kindest people must draw boundaries. Today, as I sit in my garden again, watering the plants I planted years ago, I feel peace. Not because life is perfect, but because I learned to protect what matters. Moral of the story: love your family deeply, but never lose your self-respect in the process. Kindness is a strength, but only when it walks alongside dignity. If you allow people to treat you like you don't belong, even your own home can feel cheujede. Respect isn't given by age alone. It must be maintained by actions, boundaries, and courage. My name is Zor. I am 61 years old, and this is the day I learned that sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is quietly take back what he never should have given away: his dignity.